Hi, can you discuss dealing with the challenges of being a frum single woman? Family is a massive ideal in Orthodox Jewish communities, she writes. To illustrate my point, your inner circle content currently includes 6 series. I guess this was a while back when we only had 6. And 2 of them are centered around marriage and parenting. It's excruciatingly painful to be single and feel so alone all the time. Not just to experience moments of loneliness like everyone does, but to actually live life alone, possibly forever. And it's scary, no, terrifying, to realize that some are blessed with marriage and children and some aren't. And it's possible that marriage is not in God's plan for me. Girls are raised to prepare for marriage. It's the ultimate goal. So much comes back to, quote, one day when you're a wife and mother. And it's heartbreaking to see so many people not get the beauty of a family, and so painful when you're one of those people. I want to believe that God is kind, but then I see my married friends giving and receiving love, raising children, etc., and I'll admit, I'm overcome by longing that may border on jealousy. Marriage and family are so crucial, and it's difficult to accept that it's not given to all of us. As a side note, dealing with the pain of being viewed as less than, quote unquote, or immature on account of your singlehood makes this challenge much greater. Can you share your perspective on how I can deal with this in a Torah way without assuming blame for my singlehood or becoming bitter and growing to resent God? She writes sweetly, sorry for asking such a lengthy question. And then there were a whole bunch of other people who sent in very similar questions. Someone wrote in and said, hello, thanks for creating such a useful platform. How can an unmarried person maximize their single years? I just heard your class about how one's relationship with God is dependent on their relationship with themselves and their spouse. If one doesn't have a spouse, does that put an immovable limit on their relationship with God? What about someone who never marries, not by choice, but because they never found the one? Or here's another question. Hi, you said that if someone is open to getting married and wants to get married, they will. How do you explain all the people who wish they would get married but never do? Here's another question. Hi, how can one know how much ishtadlus, how much effort is required in dating? Singles should meet with 1 shadchan, 3, 10, none? Should one take time to go to singles events? Should one pay monthly memberships to be on dating websites? Should one pay to meet with shadchanim? There doesn't seem to be any clear answer. Some say no hishtadlus is too much, while others say that every marriage is a miracle regardless of what one does. Still others say that one needs to do as much hishtadlus as is needed to avoid relying on a miracle. Since people get married through shadchanim and people get married without them, there's no need to meet with shadchanim. What are your thoughts about all of this? Okay, so we're almost out of time. Really, this question deserves an entire evening. I really should devote an entire evening just to this issue. It's the question of our generation. And it's important to understand that what you're experiencing is happening within a cultural context. We sometimes view the religiously observant community as occupying a hermetically sealed cultural bubble, as if we aren't impacted by the social trends that are around us. But what you and I are experiencing, what all of us are seeing in the challenge of getting married, is happening in parallel right outside of our cultural bubble, as if the observant Jewish bubble is a permeable membrane. And everything that's happening around us in the non-Jewish world flows in and suffuses our world just with a bit of a delay. Think of this for a minute. Barely half of the adults in the United States, a record low, are currently married. Barely half. And the median age at first marriage has never been higher. For women, it's 26.5 years. For grooms, it's 28.7. That's according to Pew Research Center and the U.S. Census. Again, speaking about the surrounding culture, not the Orthodox Jewish world. In 1960, 72% of all adults ages 18 and older were married. 72% of people 18 and older were married. Today, just 51% are. If current trends continue, the share of adults who are currently married will drop to below half within a few years. Other living arrangements, cohabitation, single-person households, single parenthood, have all grown far more prevalent in the surrounding society. The Pew Research analysis also finds the number of new marriages in the U.S. declined by 5% just between 2009 and 2010, a sharp one-year drop. And they say it's not just related to economic issues. And it's not just the US. This is modernity. All across the world, all across the post-industrial societies, we're seeing these sorts of long-term declines, and they're not related to business cycles. The declines have persisted through good economic times and bad. In the United States, the declines have occurred among all age groups, but they're most dramatic among young adults. Exactly where the frum world, where the religious world is experiencing it. Today, just 20% of adults under the age of 30 in America are married. 20% of 30 and under are married today. That's compared to 59% back in 1960. 20% today, 59% back in 1960. And that line is crashing. So if only about 1 out of 5 US citizens marry before age 30, how does that compare to what's happening in the Orthodox world? So as I said, there's a delay. The surrounding culture flows in slowly, and it flows more into the people who are on the edge. There was a 2023 study called DAAS that found that among those raised modern Orthodox, 68% of women under 30 and 58% of men under 30 were married. 68% of women under 30, 58% of men under 30, among those people who call themselves modern Orthodox. And these numbers were a little higher than 68 and 58% for those who define themselves as quote unquote yeshivish. So what we're looking at is a cultural continuum. The Orthodox Jews who most thoroughly integrated into the surrounding culture, not surprisingly, are somewhat more affected by the surrounding culture, by the mainstream American move to delay or give up on marriage. The Orthodox Jews who are a bit more culturally isolated are also impacted a little bit less by the surrounding culture. They're still impacted, but not quite as much. And when you start looking at statistics, it's not pretty. It's not pretty. But it's not as bad as the mainstream in America because we do have a bubble around us. It's a permeable bubble, but it protects us to some degree. In a very interesting article, David Katzoff, a volunteer shadchan, made these observations. He said like this. He said, "It appears to me that there are simply not enough Jewish single men to go around who fit the qualities of what most Jewish single women are seeking in a spouse. There appear to be many more men than women who have social challenges, don't have a firm career path, or seem resistant to long-term commitment. Based on numerous conversations with singles and reviewing dozens of shidduch resumes, emotional intelligence is the characteristic that stood out as the disconnect between what most women are seeking in a potential spouse, but are often not finding. A 30-year-old woman in New York City recently relayed to me that, quote, finding a man who is emotionally available, emotionally aware, and emotionally intelligent has been the biggest challenge in my dating journey. There seems to be a lack of emotional maturity as well. For example, being able to communicate feelings with respect, handling conflict without getting defensive, and or understanding their own inner world, end quote." This volunteer shadchan continues and says, on the flip side, many women I've worked with were not as open-minded to going on a first or second date if the man does not match all the criteria that they're seeking in a potential spouse. Many men have expressed frustration that they weren't given a fair chance. This fellow says, I proposed shidduch ideas of men I knew personally and had vetted, which were rejected by women because the guys were either balei tshuva, had a slightly different hashkafa than them, did not have a professional career, or were too short. Okay, this fellow, Mr. Katzoff, himself represents another facet of the choices people make that impact marriage rates in the Orthodox community. We always focus on the choices that are being made by the people who are actually dating, the singles. But Mr. Katzoff made a choice. He's a self-described volunteer shadchan. He doesn't take money. Think about that job description. It means he is committed to investing his own time to assist others in finding their marriage partners. Would marriage rates in the Orthodox community increase if there were 100,000 more people as committed to investing their time in helping others as Mr. Katzoff? 100,000 people probably would represent only about a sixth of the Orthodox community in America. What if half the Orthodox community made this their hobby? And there were hundreds of thousands of volunteer shadchanim searching their surroundings for possible matches, charging nothing, just taking care of people. Would that change marriage rates? What percentage of Orthodox Jews have actually invested the time to successfully help a couple meet and get married? These are uncomfortable questions to ask. But just saying it's a gzeira doesn't give us a path out of this terrible situation that so many singles find themselves in, that we as a Jewish community find ourselves in. These questions help us understand that there are myriad choices by myriad individuals that contribute to the painful situation that so many singles find themselves in. It's difficult for most singles and most marrieds to say that they've made all the right choices and done all the right things to resolve this crisis. Now, careful. This is not to assign blame, and it's not to diffuse blame. In fact, blame is exactly the wrong direction to go. I want to say that again. Blame is not helpful. Instead of blame, every one of us has to view this as an opportunity. Everyone can help everyone. Both singles and marrieds can shift dozens or hundreds of small choices they make in a different direction, away from those choices that are made by the secular cultural mainstream that surrounds us. And that would impact lots of individuals' lives in the most significant ways. I know, personal experience, there are communal leaders they've created these funds to reward professional shadchanim who succeed in helping people in their communities. That model has helped many in what they call out-of-town communities. In Lakewood and Brooklyn, I know Rosh Yeshiva have created their own shidduch initiatives. World Mizrachi has done the same. The International Organization of Musar Vadim has its own shidduch initiative, where they charge nothing. They refuse to take a penny for shidduchim. And it's not just an organization here, an organization there. It's many, many communal organizations around the world. And in each one of these cases, they've made a significant difference in the statistics and therefore in the lives of lots of individuals. Mr. Katzoff recommends creating widespread shidduch counseling to help singles evaluate and, if they choose, to help realign their red lines. I would recommend that the observant world create something like Partners in Torah, but it would be Partners in Shidduchim. And it would involve community-wide weekly meetings where a bunch of friends and neighbors all get together to share shidduch information with each other. Imagine 60 people meet every week in their group, and each person there presents the profile of just one single that he or she knows to the rest of the group. So every week, every person there hears about 60 people, profiles of 60 people. How many dates would that lead to? If every person in every Orthodox community, if every adult in every Orthodox community was attending a group like this, how many marriages would result? But it takes a night. It takes a night a week. And that's a choice. It's one of many, 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 many choices that we can make differently than the surrounding culture. And of course, I haven't really addressed your question because none of this talks about the pain of being single. There are two primary paths, I think, to ease that pain. One which I'm not going to recommend would be to normalize singlehood and say that getting married isn't necessarily a goal, not something people should pursue. And I admit that would eliminate the social pressure to get married and the expectations that could be unmet for years or for a lifetime. But it's very difficult to normalize singlehood and remain loyal to the Torah's family-centered culture, tradition, and the halacha. I suppose people can walk away from the Jewish tradition and halacha that encourage marriage, and many people have. But what about the majority of people who don't feel comfortable with the choice to assimilate into the surrounding secular culture? Is there another way to ease the pain? So I think there is. The other option is empathy, sensitivity, really thinking about what other people experience. Sensitivity doesn't mean wiping our language clean or our Torah classes clean of references to marriage. We can still talk about marriage. We can still encourage marriage. We can still teach about marriage. Sensitivity means embracing singles, making their participation in Shabbos and the Chagim, in Torah classes, in Simchas, and in other cultural events more comfortable, more satisfying. It's not comfortable for single people to reach out for meal invitations constantly. It's not comfortable to attend educational programs where every Torah class speaks exclusively to those who are already married. The easiest way to know what we as a community need to change is just include lots of single people in our communal planning. They know what causes them pain. And that's something that we all want to become aware of and take into account. Wow, I really, really didn't do this justice. Your question is far, far more important and far broader than I dealt with tonight, but we're out of time. At some point, really, maybe we should devote a whole evening to the issue of being single. It's really the challenge of the generation.
I hope you liked that answer from Rabbi Kelemen. If you'd like to listen to more questions and answers and ask your own questions, as well as listen to brand new material that Rabbi Kelemen is producing right now, check it out at LawrenceKelemen.com. You put in your name and email address, and we'll send you free lectures from all the new material Rabbi Kelemen has been publishing. Let us know if you have any questions. info@LawrenceKelemen.com.